And President-elect Trump has promised to carry out the largest deportation operation in U.S. history. And before those operations begin, some migrants are already choosing to leave the country voluntarily.
Well, would you look at that? It turns out that on the eve of the evil orange man being sworn into office for the second time, who ran on a policy of mass deportations, sending the illegals, the asylum fraudsters, back to their home country, it turns out all these different various people who were in fear for their lives in their home country, who definitely weren't defrauding the asylum system, have decided to self-deport, have decided to voluntarily leave the United States of America for fear that they will be not only prosecuted for coming here illegally, not only deported, but banned from ever entering the United States for, I think, 10 years, which is the penalty when you are deported from the United States of America. Isn't it interesting how the change in language, the change of rhetoric, actually responds or corresponds to a change in behavior? If you guys will remember, Joe Biden asked illegal migrants to surge to the border and claim asylum because that's who we are.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
But when the evil orange man says, no, we're not going to accept that, we know you're committing asylum fraud and there are going to be consequences for that, all of a sudden, the surge is to the border, but to get the hell out of the country. Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we're going to talk about the mass self-deportations that are being reported in a bunch of different local news stations and some national news outlets, because it is yet another consequence of the change in the presidency that we're seeing, that people voted for in the 2024 election. But before we get into that, I will remind you that on February 15th and February 16th, they're doing DebateCon 5. I will be doing a debate on the 16th. It is in Newark, New Jersey. The link to tickets is in the top of the description. If you're in and around the area, I would love to see you. It's less than a month away.
Right now, President-elect Donald Trump's team is finalizing executive orders on immigration.
CNN is reporting they could be released hours after he's sworn in on Monday. CBS 8's Chris Grow live near the border in San Ysidro with the fears that many immigrants are facing right now.
So this local news segment is out of San Diego, and a lot of it is about the feelings of the illegal migrants on the ground, how they are hurt by the idea that the law that they have been given a free pass on for a very long time might actually be enforced against them. And I will just point out that there are far too many segments about the feelings of the people who came here illegally, and far too few segments about Americans who actually have to experience the consequences of unfettered illegal immigration.
Can't even imagine that uncertainty right now, being at home, wondering whether or not you, yourself, your family members could potentially be deported, how quickly, all of that running through those scenarios and trying to work with advocates like the ones in Texas, here in California, the ones that our sister stations have spoken with to get an idea of exactly how those in the immigrant community are feeling right now. Take a listen.
So the fact that some of these people are deciding to go back is good. It shows that Trump's leadership is in fact effective. And in addition to that, we also got word that through pressure, through the threat of tariffs, the Mexican president has agreed to accept deportees from Venezuela and from Cuba, which is quite unique because typically those countries don't accept the deportees, but they might accept them from Mexico. And this was achieved through the threats of potential tariffs against the Mexican government. And honestly, I'm in a weird situation when the conversation of tariffs come up, because I don't believe that Trump's fundamental belief that tariffs are good for the economy is true, but the way that they're implemented time and time again as a leveraging technique based probably on the belief from President Trump that they are good for the economy, which I do believe is something that he holds true to, actually end up proving effective time and time again, and this is a perfect example of that. But of course, we're going to hear about the advocates and all these different organizations that are ready to fight back against the evil orange man. We heard about the state of California calling in a special legislative session in order to Trump-proof their state. Of course, not doing the same when wildfires broke out in Los Angeles. But yeah, let's get into some of the distress in these migrant communities.
A lot of distrust, and also what they're worried about being separated as a family.
Know what agencies are available to assist you in the event that you get detained, and to always know that you have the right to have an attorney advise you on both the criminal and the immigration impacts.
And then, of course, the reason why there's this uncertainty is because of promises made by President-elect Trump, as well as some of his cabinet picks on the campaign trail and even after they won the election. According to CNN, executive actions that could be taken as soon as President Trump is sworn in could include U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement sweeps in major cities, sending more Pentagon resources to the U.S. southern border, placing additional restrictions on who is eligible to enter the U.S., and then this one, for those who are already here seeking citizenship in the U.S., the rollback of Biden-era policies and mass deportation.
So again, you hear a lot about people concerned about their families being separated and all this stuff, but in reality and actuality, there is no reason why, as Tom Homan said, you can't just deport the families together. If you don't want to be separated from somebody that is an illegal immigrant, guess what? You're welcome to get on board the plane or get on board the truck and be sent out of the country with them, because in reality, when you get arrested for a crime as a normal, average, everyday citizen, you don't get to bring your family with you when you go to jail to face the consequences of that crime. So the same is true for these asylum fraud cases, which make up a huge portion of what went on during the Biden administration. But in reality, I don't think there's any reason why we should not be accepting the asylum claim of the parents, rejecting them, but somehow accepting the claim of the children that they brought with them. If there is no threat in their home country of the dangers that they put on their form, the threats to their safety or whatever, then they should be sent back together, because one would be true for the parents and it would also be true for the children. In addition to that, I will also point out that it's so obvious that they were committing fraud in these many instances and they are actually economic migrants, because you wouldn't self-deport under the idea that you could be arrested for immigrating to the United States illegally unless you knew your home country was relatively safe for you.
Now, Marky, it's unclear, but we are starting to see a trend, and this comes as cities across the U.S. and Mexico are now bracing for President-elect's deportation operation. But his hardline messaging on those deportation efforts have some migrants panicking and some even choosing now to self-deport back to their home countries. I spoke with immigration attorney Rolando Vasquez, who tells me that some of the immigrants that he represents that entered under the Biden administration are now choosing to return home, fearing deportation under the incoming administration.
I mean, if anything, this should actually help us screen people better, because we would actually be able to figure out who is a legitimate asylum seeker by the fact that they would be willing to subject themselves to the process in the United States of America and determine the result, because those people are more likely to actually be afraid of being sent back to their home nation. In addition to that, I will also point out that there is no reason why even legitimate asylum seekers from nations like Venezuela get to skip countries like Colombia and a bunch of different countries in Central America all the way on their way to the United States of America and claim asylum here first. It just makes sense. And by the way, Trump had this during his first term. It was called to remain in Mexico, for these people to apply for asylum in each country along the way, and then the American government can assess them if they are denied in each country along the way. Again, it's just logical. It's just sensible policy. Asylum is not supposed to be a shortcut for economic migration. The purpose of asylum is, I am in fear, I need to get to the next safe country, and a lot of these people travel through 6 different countries in order to do so. And to be clear, I'm not condemning all the migrants. I'm not condemning all the people who enter the country illegally. Sure, it is improper for them to abuse the asylum system, and it does have consequences on legitimate asylum seekers who end up getting lost in the flood of people that were never meant to overwhelm this process in this way. But if you could come to the United States of America, because we are a wonderful country, you would probably do so as well. The people that I blame are the people in the Biden administration who looked at a very sensible policy, remain in Mexico, under the Trump administration, decided that was evil, white, and racist, and that people should surge to the border, again, as Biden said during the campaign, and as happened under the Biden administration for every year of his presidency, at least until a couple of months before it started to be a problem in the election, and then he signed executive orders to pretend that suddenly he was for enforcing the border. But now we see what legitimate enforcement of the border actually does, what the threat of enforcement actually does, by the fact that all these different various people are going back to their home country, or going back at least through the border on their way to their home country.
According to some experts, there are about 11 million immigrants estimated to be living in the U.S. right now, and the side other side to this, though, is that some are preaching patience here, because with 11 million potentially or more, that there could be a very long and lengthy process to carry out deportations, and that it could not be as simple as maybe those in the Trump administration are saying.
So the 11 million number is a really old number. That's the number that I remember hearing back in 2012 when Mitt Romney was running for president against Barack Obama, and obviously it is much more people, especially when you consider the fact that so many more people ended up surging to the border under the Biden administration. So why that number keeps getting quoted time and time again, I have no idea, but the fact of the matter is, yes, some of these people need to go. And obviously you want to start with the criminals, you want to start with the people that are defrauding the asylum system, and work your way back to people who have been here a long time, but there's no conversation to be had about the so-called DACA recipients when you have all these other people in the country.
Just as recent as yesterday, they notified me that they were going to depart the country voluntarily, and understanding that, you know, the Trump administration is going to carry through on their promises.
And it's not just Trump's deportation plans that are influenced these decisions. Vasquez says it's also that Mexico is now open to accepting non-Mexican deportees. Mexico's move would impact Cuban and Venezuelan migrants the most, since those countries typically do not accept deportation flights from the U.S., but may from Mexico.
And by the way, that is the major problem with programs like DACA or with programs that grant amnesty to illegal immigrants as a group based on a year that they came in or something of the sort. Because what ends up happening is you end up creating an incentive for people to cross the border illegally, try to wait it out long enough for the laws to change, for people to become sympathetic, and then we end up with a greater illegal immigration problem down the line. Again, this is the result of the amnesty for like 1 to 2 million people under the Reagan administration, and now even with the conservative estimates, even with the minimal estimates, we're talking about 11 million people in this nation illegally. That is not workable. What you need to do, and what I'm in favor of doing, is getting rid of people, start deporting them, again, from the people who came in most recently under the asylum fraud stuff, the people who are criminals in the United States of America, and start working your way back. Then, after you're done with that, you can assess or create a program that goes on a case-by-case basis to look at individuals, what they contribute to this country, and then maybe we pick and choose between them on who we want to stay, because there are plenty of people, let's be real, that came here without the proper documentation, that are quite successful in the United States of America, that we would likely want to keep. But again, this whole thing about DACA as a class, if you came to the United States before this certain age, in and around these years, is a disaster in the long run, because what that ultimately ends up leading to is more and more people trying to take advantage of the system. Now, I don't think during the Trump administration we're going to get that far back in terms of people in the United States of America that are going to be deported. I know he's saying mass deportations, but the fact of the matter is he has to get rid of as many people as possible until the media puts enough pressure on him in order to stop him, which, by the way, was far too soon into his last term, and then we see where we're at that point in time. But eventually, the long-term immigration project for the Republican Party needs to be limits on legal immigration. Obviously, you need to lock down and ban people for entering the country illegally, but then the long-term people that enter the nation that are here illegally, that we want to decide who we want to keep and who we want to go, we have to figure out a way to work through that does not just give a blanket amnesty based on, again, the year that you came here, or when your parents brought you, how old you were, or any of these other factors that are just going to incentivize people in the long run to come here illegally and try to wait it out. That is the issues that we have to balance in this country. That is something that we really have to work on. But honestly, we're not going to get to that point in time in this next term in the Trump administration, if I'm being perfectly honest. And any rush toward a program like that is going to look too much like an amnesty program, and again, is going to create all those corrupt incentives that I'm worried about. But as of right now, it is a good thing that people are deciding to pack up and leave on their own. It shows that it is effective when you actually message against these people, and the overwhelming majority of the American people, according to polling, say that they support mass deportations. Now, to be clear, that is top-line polling. Many a times I criticize the left wing for citing top-line polling as proof positive that their agenda is super popular. So when you get into the details and all that, I'm sure a lot of that support is going to break down, but it is a good thing right now that all these immigration organizations are on the back foot, and Trump and his agenda DACA are marching forward, especially if you're concerned about illegal immigration, which if you're a Trump voter, that's one of the main issues he messaged on. I can't imagine you wouldn't be.
But back out here live, we are also seeing reports, according to the Associated Press, of those who are not willing to take that chance of waiting and are actually self-deporting, going to other countries, like one woman that the AP profiled who went from Nicaragua to the U.S., and then as soon as Trump was elected and they started hearing again some of those promises, has now moved to Ireland.
I mean, that's a rather odd path for that person to go, that they're going to go to Ireland, which, by the way, has their own immigration problems, and they're also trying to erode the Irish identity, which, by the way, withstood the test of time of English conquest and English rule and the English attacking the Irish for generations, but now they're just giving it up willingly on the altar of progressivism. But yeah, I mean, if you want to do it that way, that's totally fine. Good luck to that woman, I guess. But yeah, it's pretty good to have people deciding to leave the United States of America on their own. It makes it much simpler and makes the process much quicker when you're starting to go through these criminal complaints. Now, of course, there's a bunch of cities and a bunch of states that are vowing not even to turn over their illegal migrant criminals. Those people are disgusting. That has to be, by the way, fought back with defunding of those cities and defunding of those states. It genuinely makes no sense to continue to pay these governments with federal funds if they're going to use that money in order to sue the federal government, and of course use that money in order to protect criminals and avoid federal law. In my opinion, this is a basic thing, but we will see how the Trump administration rolls. Again, this video should go up before he's sworn in, and I'm sure if he's going to unleash the executive orders, we'll actually have some way to measure this or some look into the idea of how they're going to enforce this, again, shortly after he's sworn in. But I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me in the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about mass self-deportations. Till next time.